Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at a brand almost everyone remembers, a name that probably brings a specific image to your mind right now: Nokia. For a good decade, this company was, the undisputed king of mobile phones. They were famous for those nearly indestructible devices, and yeah, of course, the game Snake. They were so dominant that the brand was the phone.
But then, in just a few short years, poof, they lost it all. So how on earth did the world's biggest phone company collapse so quickly, so completely? Their story is a wild ride, a masterclass in disruption, innovation, and the dangers of getting too comfortable.
All right, to really get what happened to Nokia, you have to go way, way back. Because they didn't start with phones. Not even close. The roots are far more industrial and, honestly, a little weird.
So, the whole story starts way back in the 19th century, can you believe it? With a single paper pulp mill in Finland. And over the next 100 years or so, it merged with a rubber works and a cable factory, and finally, in 1967, they officially became the Nokia Corporation.
And this is just brilliant. It really shows you how strange and diverse their history was. On one side, you've got toilet paper, and on the other, military gear. The jump from paper products to one of the world's first portable phones, that's one of the most radical business transformations you'll ever see.
And it didn't stop there. They also made rubber boots, car tires, TVs, even personal computers. For most of its life, Nokia wasn't a phone company. It was this huge industrial conglomerate with its fingers in all sorts of pies.
Okay, so how do you go from making rubber boots to being a global tech giant? Well, the whole story pivots in the 1990s, when one single, really bold decision changed absolutely everything.
So picture this. It's the early 90s, Finland's in a deep recession, and the new CEO makes this huge gamble. A massive one. He sells off all those other divisions, the rubber, the cables, the computers, to bet the company's entire future on mobile phones.
And wow, did that bet pay off? See, they didn't just join the market, they helped build the foundations for it by working on the global GSM standard. Then they just dominated with phones that were simple, tough as nails, and with those replaceable Express-on covers, they suddenly made the phone a fashion accessory. Super smart. So, by the late 90s, this whole strategy had just launched them into the stratosphere. They built an empire that seriously seemed untouchable.
And the speed of it all, it was just breathtaking. By 1998, they had officially knocked Motorola off the top spot to become the world's #1 mobile phone brand. They didn't just win, they created a whole new market and then completely owned it. Now get this, at their absolute peak, this was in 2007, their global market share was a staggering 40.4%. Let that sink in. Nearly half of all phones sold in the entire world were Nokias. That kind of dominance is almost impossible to even imagine today. And their impact was so huge that back in the year 2000, Nokia alone, just one company, accounted for 4% of Finland's entire GDP. They were more than a company, they were a huge source of national pride, driving the whole country's economy. But you know how these stories go. Just as they hit at incredible peak, the world changed. And Nokia, well, they didn't change with it. The fall was even more spectacular than the rise.
So what happened? Well, 2007. The iPhone arrives. And right after that, Google's Android. And just like that, the entire game shifted. It wasn't about who made the best hardware anymore, it was all about who had the best software and app store. And that was a fight Nokia was totally unprepared for.
You see, Nokia's operating system, Symbian, had served them well, but overnight it looked ancient. It just wasn't built for a world of apps. For developers, it was a total nightmare to work with. So naturally, they all flocked to the simple, unified platforms that Apple and Google were offering.
And you can see it right here. The collapse was just brutal and incredibly fast. After peaking at over 50% market share in 2007, their smartphone business just cratered. It went to nearly zero in just 6 years, as everyone jumped ship from Symbian.
This led to a really famous internal memo. The new CEO, a guy named Stephen Alap, who they'd hired from Microsoft, basically described the company's terrible situation. He said Nokia was like a man standing on a burning oil platform. You either stay and burn, or you jump into the icy water. A radical, desperate leap was needed to survive.
And what was that leap? A partnership with Microsoft that turned out to be a total disaster. They abandoned their own software and bet everything on Windows Phone. But it just never took off. Developers ignored it, customers ignored it, and by 2014, Microsoft just bought Nokia's failing phone business, pretty much putting it out of its misery. But wait, that wasn't the end of Nokia. Not at all. It was just the end of their story in the phone business. The company actually survived, and it did it by going right back to its roots.
So, after selling off that mobile division, the company pivoted. They went right back to their old expertise in telecommunications infrastructure. You know, all the hardware and software that makes mobile networks actually work. So, here's the thing to remember. Nokia is still a huge, successful tech company today. They're a major player in 5G network gear, they own the legendary Bell Labs, and yeah, that Nokia phone brand you still see on shelves, that exists because of a licensing deal with a completely different company.
You know, Nokia's story is more than just a trip down memory lane. It's a huge warning sign for today's tech giants. It's a stark reminder that being on top is temporary, and if you don't adapt, even the biggest empires can fall. Which really leaves us with one last very important question to think about.